If you like what we do here on Skiba News Nation, please like and subscribe, and also share with others so we can grow the biggest truth-seeking community on the internet. Huge shout out to all of our Patreons out there. If you like bonus content, you want some extra Skiba News Nation stuff, please go to patreon.com/Skiba News Nation.
Welcome to Skiba News Nation, bringing you unfiltered views, news, interviews, discussions, and more. And now, here's your host, Jeremiah Skiba, award-winning musician and son of Rob Skiba.
With the son of the legendary Rob Skiba, Jeremiah Skiba, what's up?
With my great and insightful co-host, Mr. Jake Grant. It's like I don't even want to wake up.
He's on a quest for truth.
There's a photo that's going around where Lee Harvey Oswald was standing right here. If that was moments after Kennedy was assassinated, then how's that a possibility? November 22nd, 1963 is a day that the world changed forever. Not because of Kennedy. That was the first time the word conspiracy theorist was used to demonize people like us. TruthorCon is very important. It's where us truth seekers are getting together. Do you really believe that right up there was a shooter that killed Kennedy right there? You think a back and to the left shot could have came from up there? I think it came from right where you're standing. That's what the fatal shooter was, right in that storm drain. That's the only way a downward trajectory could come. The kind of stuff we're going to be learning at TruthorCon 2025, so make sure that you're here in Dallas, Texas. We hope to see you there.
Lee Harvey Oswald allegedly shot and killed.
Allegedly.
Hey Skiba News Nation family, welcome to episode 125 of Skiba News Nation, your weekly source of the latest news, controversial topics, conspiracies, forgotten history, and so much more. I'm your host Jeremiah Skiba. Today we're going to be talking about the big beautiful bill passes, what's really inside it, Middle East peace talks, Iran threatens to assassinate the US president, Iranian women allegedly offering their babies to their leader, Palantir AI teams up with nuclear industry, an all-new Opus Corner, and this week for History's Mysteries, we're going to be talking about the Ruth Price 911 call. Is it the most chilling call in history, or an elaborate hoax? Memes and much more. Now, as always, I'd like to introduce my great and insightful co-host, Mr. Jake Grant. Welcome, Jake. What's up?
Hey, man. I am super stoked at the airing of this episode. We are going to both be at Hebrew Fest, and we're probably kicking it right now, listening to some great hip-hop. And if you guys want, this Saturday, there are some free tickets up for grabs. So if you want to show up to Hebrew Fest and you need some free tickets, you can go to HebrewFest.com to find out where it's at and all that kind of stuff. But anyways, man, I know I'm going to be so stoked once you're here because we're recording this and you're in Dallas still. But we'll be just kicking it, having a good time. It's going to be awesome.
And then we'll be going live tomorrow. When it airs tomorrow on Skiba News Nation, we'll do a live stream instead of our Sunday live stream. We'll do it on Saturday. So make sure you guys tune into that because we're going to be, I'm sure, covering some pretty crazy, awesome stuff. So
yeah, man. This Friday is when all the hip hop acts are going, so I'm super excited. I think it's going to be a jam. But anyways, man, we got some great news to cover this week. Let's get into it.
Alrighty.
All right, so the Senate has officially passed through the big beautiful bill. Check out this coverage of it because this ties into something that we've covered in previous weeks, which is some interesting buffs and funding to AI development, and it's all contained in this big, beautiful bill. Not to mention, it's also giving a lot of other lawmakers pause, especially Congress, who had many carrots dangled in front of them to get them to vote on it, and a lot of those carrots had been stripped from the bill that was officially passed through the Senate as of recording this. But check this out.
The tax cut that was put into place by President Trump in his first term, if that's allowed to expire today, if this bill does not pass, that hikes taxes for 68% of working Americans.
Right, and the biggest hikes would be for the lower household income. So, and also the pro-growth aspect of this, right? We want to grow this nation. We want to grow the economy, and taxes are a central part of that, particularly for corporations.
Hold the vice president breaking the tie right now, which means they had some no votes from those Republicans. This bill, the big, beautiful bill, has passed because the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, has come to the Hill more than once thinking that he would do this. And when he showed up this morning, they were right. He would be needed. He has done it. Let's listen and see if there is any audio that we can take in.
Okay. Pursuant to the order 4 February 29, 1960, the hour of 12 noon having arrived, the Senate having been in continuous session since yesterday, the Senate will suspend for a prayer by the Senate chaplain.
Let us pray. Eternal, ever-blessed God, help our senators to walk on your path for the glory of your name. Help them to walk with humility so that they will strive to be servants of the people. Help them to walk with forgiveness so that they will forgive as they desire to be forgiven. Help them to walk with courage so that nothing will deflect them from the way they ought to take. Help them to walk with endurance so that nothing may daunt or discourage them until they reach their goal. Lord, help them to walk with loyalty so that nothing will ever seduce their hearts from their devotion to you. We pray in your loving name. Amen.
I've never seen a Senate chaplain give
I didn't even know that was a thing.
prayer. Wow.
You know, it's interesting. They don't allow prayer in school, but it's okay to do it in Senate or...
And with that, we are watching now. The big, beautiful bill has passed on the vote, breaking the tie of the Vice President of the United States. And Charles, you were talking about the tax portion of this. What good does this do?
He's going to push it through.
Outside of
I think Trump's going to pass it.
What the president put into place with tax cuts that were monumental, really, for so many Americans across the country. What does this allow him to do going forward?
This is the crux of it all, really, to be quite honest. It's the growth effect, the multiplier effect of businesses keeping more of what they earn, being able to invest that into future products and being able to invest that into employees. And that's what the foundation of the economy is. And listen, obviously, it's one thing when you say things on the campaign trail and when you hope for things on the campaign trail. As we can see, this thing is very contentious. Just your conversation with Chip Roy shows that when it gets back to the House, there's going to be some more, fisticuffs or another Donnybrook, so to speak. But, President Trump put out a post yesterday talking about the growth aspect of this. And I think that's what he's focused on more than anything else. Make the pie bigger, make the economic pie huge so that everyone can get a chance at an opportunity. Because it's one thing to save taxes as a lower income home. It's another thing to have have more prosperity, to grow your job, to grow your business, to have a business, to start a business. And I think that's what the president is aiming for.
Look, what you were talking about.
All right. Do you guys remember that Schoolhouse Rock?
Yep.
Yep.
I hope they make it into a musical on Broadway.
I cannot help but to think about that song every time I hear the title, The Big Beautiful Bill. How about you?
Yep.
They'll replace Hamilton with it.
Yeah. Hey, listen, it sounds like this thing's going to be going through. So whatever provisions were made in Senate in this bill and all the things that they want to fund are definitely going through. And that's why we're seeing things like this on the world stage. Very interesting. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said late Sunday, trade talks with the U.S. have resumed after Canada rescinded its plan to tax U.S. technology firms. Oh, man. Okay, so if you guys remember, just recently there was some tariff trade drama between Trump and Canada. And so now what we're seeing is that they have paved the way for American innovation in AI and computing technology, and hey, now they can get it into Canadians' hands without the Canadian government taking their pound of flesh, which means more money for whatever the USA has planned. In terms of fulfillment of some of the recent events going on in the Middle East, signaling off a time of peace and optimism, check out this clip.
Bushner and I and a few others negotiated the Abraham Accords. Those conditions are there today. Very strong America, very strong Israel, rock solid connection and alliance between Israel and America, and a weak Iran.
There could be an agreement encompassing Gaza. It reads, this victory presents an opportunity for a dramatic widening of peace agreements. We're working on this with enthusiasm. Besides the freeing of hostages and defeat of Hamas, there is a window of opportunity here that we must not miss for even one day.
As all of this is going on, we also have Steve Witkoff, President Trump's special envoy to the Middle East, talking about maybe expanding the Abraham Accords. Listen to this.
We think we're going to have some pretty big announcements on countries that are now coming into the Abraham Peace Accords. And we're hoping for normalization across an array of countries that maybe people would have never contemplated would come in.
Of course, nobody would have predicted that Trump could have pulled off the Abraham Accords in the first place. Do you think that it's possible that we could see an expansion of them?
No, I think you'll see an expansion. You'll see it quite quickly. You know, before Iran unleashed Hamas against Israel on October 7, 2023, Saudi Arabia and Israel were very, very close to a deal. They both said so publicly. And that's why Iran unleashed this. They wanted a war between Israel and Arab countries. But now that Iran has been completely and utterly, militarily, politically, diplomatically, economically, financially, defanged, there's really no incentive for any other country to do anything other than peace in the Middle East, peace and prosperity.
Benjamin Netanyahu is, according to many leaks that are carefully calibrated in Israeli media about what's cooking behind the scenes, the talk is about normalization deals with countries in the region, something bigger, something more grandiose, something that Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu can claim as a win while sidestepping the issue of Gaza, of Palestine in general. And when it comes to Gaza, according to some reports, we're talking about a ceasefire, about an end to Hamas rule, perhaps even Arab participation in ruling over Gaza, but certainly ending the idea of Palestinian statehood. And that would serve Netanyahu's domestic purposes, because already we've heard commentary from the Israeli Minister of Finance who said that if in exchange for making peace or normalizing relations with Arab countries, Israel would have to accept a Palestinian state, the minister doesn't think that that's worth it.
How much do the Abraham Accords that were established in the president's first term now lay the groundwork? Is that the template, and does that expand?
Well, one of the president's key objectives is that the Abraham Accords be expanded, that more countries come into it, and we are working on that on my team and in coordination with the Secretary of State and the entire State Department.
We're working on Gaza, trying to get it taken care of.
Prior to President Trump's remarks, we sat down with a former agent for Shin Bet, Israel's equivalent of ASIO.
this supposed agreement by Netanyahu to end it within 2 weeks of those strikes.
Yeah.
Do you believe that he has done that?
Possible. Yeah, 100%. He said, I want to go to take this victory over Iran, and when Iran is weak now, and I want to move forward.
Donald Trump, however, has not ruled out striking Iran again if Tehran is found to be enriching uranium to worrisome levels.
Would you consider bombing the country
Sure,
again?
without question, absolutely.
That's where we were in 2020. We had Iran on their heels with backbreaking sanctions. Biden came in and he gave it away. I mean, he gave the mullahs, hundreds of millions of dollars. He turned his back on Israel. He made America weak, and the Abraham Accords, not surprisingly, went nowhere. But now we're back to that same place. We have a very strong alliance, and Iran is weak. And I would expect, watch Steve Witkoff. He's very talented. I would watch the Abraham Accords closely. I think they will expand to a number of likely and less likely Muslim nations in the region.
The president and his team, namely Special Envoy Witkoff, continue to be in communication with the Iranians and especially our Gulf and Arab partners in the region to come to an agreement with Iran. As for our alliance with the State of Israel and that friendship and that partnership between the United States and the State of Israel, I would argue it has never been stronger. And we see a new era in which perhaps some of these Gulf and Arab states can sign on to the Abraham Accords. That was one of the president's most signature accomplishments in his first term, and he'd like to see more of those countries sign on in this second term. And so we look forward to sustaining a long and durable peace in the region, and the president wants to do that through a diplomatic solution. But as he proved on Saturday night, he's not afraid to use strength if we need to do it.
But Iran coming out with a new threat here overnight that I want to read for you. This is from Iran's foreign minister. They say that the great and powerful Iranian people who showed the world that the Israeli regime had no choice but to run to daddy to avoid being flattened by our missiles do not take kindly to threats and insults. That statement goes on to say that if the Israelis or the United States continues to threaten them, they're prepared to show their real capabilities and hit back.
Very quickly, I want to put this up because you talk about the Iranians being untrustworthy. Here's the Iranian parliament chanting an old phrase. Watch. I mean, there you go. Death to Israel, death to America. It's kind of the same old stuff, and this is today. And you talk about the proxies, right? Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis.
Now, clearly, there's been a lot going on in this region in recent days, and today an old war front flared up with Israeli air forces striking southern Lebanon.
The Assad regime in Syria is gone. Syria is having talks with Israel for the first time in 25 years. The Houthis are not messing with us anymore. So, Iran can yell death to America, but no one else is joining them. They're increasingly isolated, and I think that gets us to a good place. Now, with President Trump and Netanyahu, look, they just went through a war together, right? They each staked their political capital. They staked their place in history on the outcome of these 12 days in June. They looked each other in the eye. They said, can you deliver what we need? And each performed flawlessly. And now, the president says to Bibi, I'll talk to you in a couple of days. And he says, well, I'm a little jammed up. I got to sit in court and get cross-examined for 6 hours. And I think that's what prompted the president to say, you got to be kidding. I mean, you're running this incredible operation, and you're being dragged into court. And of course, the president knows better than anybody how the weaponization of the justice system could work. He sees the same thing in Israel.
This group has the ability to work together to create a historic opportunity for the Palestinian people and the people of this region. Some people have mockingly called this effort the deal of the century, but at its core, it is not just about making a deal. In fact, this effort is better referred to as the opportunity of the century, if leadership has the courage to pursue it. For a moment, imagine a new reality in the Middle East. Imagine a bustling commercial and tourist center in Gaza and the West Bank where international businesses come together and thrive. Imagine the West Bank as a blossoming economy full of entrepreneurs, engineers, scientists, and business leaders. Imagine people and goods flowing quickly and securely throughout the region as economics become more integrated and people become more prosperous. Over the next 2 days, I want us all to keep in mind the following question. Should we find reason to stay with the status quo, a broken system that favors few at the expense of many, Or should we push together to find new solutions and fight for a brighter future filled with opportunity and hope? I know which one I want to choose.
So we have the talks of peace and safety and increased interest in the Abraham Accords over in the Middle East. And we have scenes like this playing out. I found this humorous. The ultimate leftist middle-class activity is to raise the flag of the people who massacred music festival goers while attending a music festival.
Yeah.
And, you know, of course, after the strikes on Iran, we have this not surprising scene. Okay, so there you have it. The threat of assassinating President Trump from Iran's religious supreme leader. But what I think is interesting is you might be surprised who answers the call. We have hundreds of women in Tehran dressing up their children and lifting them up, dedicating them as sacrifices to a holy war against what was done to their nation, in their opinion and their perspective. They're going to be training these guys up to be a couple little ninjas. You'll know what I mean. Check this out.
Martyrdom is a hugely important concept here in the Islamic Republic of Iran. We're currently at an event where hundreds of women hold their babies into the air to show that they're willing to offer their children as martyrs for God and for Imam Hussein. All of that goes back to the legendary Battle of Karbala, where Imam Hussein held his baby into the air, asking the enemy that was besieging Karbala to give the baby water, and instead the enemy killed the baby. Now, There's nothing more glorious here than dying as a martyr. And of course, right now, that concept takes on an even more important meaning as Iran is involved in this massive struggle with Israel and the United States.
We want to show them we are not scared of anything, she says, and will support our state until they are destroyed. And she says they need to know that Imam Hussein is our everything and we should sacrifice our lives for Imam Hussein. This is a symbol saluting Imam Hussein, she says, who's the leader of all the oppressed who stand against oppressors and don't submit.
And just to show how big this is in Iran right now, the crowd here was chanting "Death to America, Death to Israel," and there was even a children's choir that was singing songs as videos were shown of Iran's missile program in action, and of course also when the Trump administration carried out those strikes against Iranian nuclear installations. In total,
Bunker
right
buster
now,
bomber.
as this conflict is taking place, all of this extremely important to the folks here.
Ooh, well, what do you think about that? That totally changes how I look at the babies we've been playing lately.
Yeah, it looks like they got
holding up little jihadi warriors who are threatening to grow up and do something about it.
They went a little heavy on the Sharpie there with the little mustaches and beards.
You know, I think that this is something that's been going on for a long time, and it's going to go on for an even longer time, regardless of what politicians and negotiations and everything else tries to accomplish. You know, you've got a group of people, or groups of people, who have a mindset.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting that you have this dichotomy of the good that is being done in the Middle East with the Trump administration and the Abraham Peace Accords coming into a very volatile situation. Obviously, look at what they're claiming to want for America and Israel and even the leaders of these countries and the back and forth. But check this out. Not only is he achieving peace in the Middle East, he's also innovating the next Patriot Act-esque technology that will be affecting all of us. Trump has made Palantir unstoppable, according to this video.
Talking about it for FOMO.
What does Trump, nuclear reactors, and a 500% stock surge have in common? Check this video out.
Here is Marley Caden, contributor for the network. And so, Marley, we start things off with Palantir as this name is up 1.7%. So it's not like it's ripping by any means, but what is the most impressive to me is this is a name that's now up 88% this year. I mean, what pullback? You can hardly see it.
It's wild. I mean, they're doing so well. And today's news, like you said, they're in the headlines all the time. Today's news, they're teaming up with the nuclear company to develop a new AI-driven real-time software platform that is going to streamline nuclear reactor construction. That's their goal. They say that it will help them build plants faster and safer with fewer delays and lower costs. So they're aiming to transform the construction of nuclear reactors by boosting efficiency. They say it will help with schedule certainty, preventing errors, and streamlining regulatory compliance through real-time data, predictive analytics, and AI-powered automation. Now, this will be led by a joint engineering team, and the nuclear company's staff will unify the construction data and operate with the software alongside the software. So a true partnership here. And obviously this is in response to President Trump's recent executive orders calling for 400 gigawatts of nuclear capacity by 2050, targeting 10 large-scale reactors under construction by 2030. So if Palantir and the nuclear company are right, Mike Gallagher said earlier today that this software could reshape the U.S. energy infrastructure. That is Palantir's goal in this partnership. And the nuclear company, obviously their focus on the other side, said that this could end the chronic delays and help the United States keep pace with China, which currently leads the U.S. in nuclear plant capacity. So huge headline for them today.
So let me ask this. How often do you see a tech company not just dabbling, but leading in nuclear construction software? This isn't a headline you expect from Silicon Valley. We're not talking about a flashy app or a new messaging platform. We're talking about real-world impact, nuclear reactors, timelines, safety, regulatory compliance. That's infrastructure, and it's national. Palantir isn't just building tools, They're stepping into roles that used to belong to government contractors and defense giants. And think about that shift. Is this the moment where Palantir stops being underestimated and starts being seen for what it truly is? A national infrastructure backbone? Because when you're streamlining reactor construction, reducing delays, and bringing predictive analytics into the heart of the energy grid, that's not just software, that's strategic capability, the kind a country needs to stay competitive. And here's the wild part. We're still early. If this partnership works, it won't just reshape energy, it could redefine how America builds anything big, from plants to ports. That's a mission worth paying attention to.
Especially because, so since Trump took office, Palantir has now secured more than $113 million in contracts, which does not include almost $800 million from the Department of Defense. Yes. And so there was like 3 earnings reports ago where they were growing their commercial side of their business, which actually is still growing, yes. But I think this was one of the most unforeseen winners of the Trump administration. I mean, we were so concerned about the fluctuations right now of government funding for a company as exposed still as Palantir is. And this has ended up being, like the greatest tailwind that I don't really feel like the market saw coming to this extent.
Well, it's really interesting because you mentioned the defense contract. So they have different silos under Palantir. There's different groups. So this one will be under Foundry, which is the one they do with their corporate clients, their corporate customers. So this NOS, it's called NOS, NOS is what they're calling this new software platform, will be underneath Foundry, which is not related to where all of their Department of Defense contracts are. All the same company, but they just have 3 different silos. They keep all the businesses separate. And this is the one that's playing catch up the most. So we could start to see that more corporate client commercial business really driving forward, potentially with the creation of this partnership if it's effective.
This wasn't just good timing, this was strategic foresight. While other companies waited around for policy stability or tried to predict election outcomes, Palantir embedded itself directly into the machinery of both national defense and corporate infrastructure. That's a rare position, one foot in the command center, the other in the boardroom, and now we're seeing the fruits of that vision. NOS, housed under Foundry instead of their defense-focused Gotham, shows this isn't just a defense play, it's a commercial playbook, built to scale, a long-term architecture that can operate under changing administrations, shifting budgets, or volatile headlines. That's what makes Palantir different. They're not reactive, they build systems to withstand fluctuation, not just survive it. And here's the real power. By separating those silos, they've future-proofed their growth. One part of the company can be chasing Pentagon contracts, while another helps Fortune 100s build reactors and infrastructure with predictive software. That's not just diversification, that's resilience by design. In a world where most tech firms are fragile to political shifts, Palantir is structured to endure.
Okay, that's such a good point. You're right, because I think that is, like we look at so many of these massive tech companies, and it's like there's the area of the business that's driving all of these streets enthusiasm, and as well as like the price, and then there's still so many legacy businesses that aren't, like, for example, NVIDIA's made improvements in like its gaming unit, but we're still seeing that lag. Of course, like everything that is data center. So I think encouraging that the lagging portion of their overall growth story seemingly has done quite well, and right now in an environment that has been very unfavorable for like the solar stocks, some of these alternative energy sources. Nuclear, well, a bit frightening to me.
It does not apply to nuclear. So Palantir in 2024, most of their gain came after the presidential election and President Trump's win. They gained 340% just in 2024. In the past year, they're up 502% as of right now.
Yeah, that is ridiculous. And I think, again, the fundamental story has shaped so much of that, because for so long this name was going parabolic, and it was like there was somewhat of a disconnect with like its overall financial profile. But I feel like seeing that improve and seeing them really at the forefront of a lot of these massive AI deals has been quite astounding. So I can imagine the street now a bit more favorable on Palantir.
Absolutely.
Quite astounding indeed. The direct connection between Palantir and AI and the advancement of the Trump administration's open AI agreements is very, very interesting indeed. And it is also very interesting that the last administration had burned back better with the whole smart cities question. with LA and Hawaii being burned down to the ground, basically. Maui being one of these locations that was docked for smart living cities, 15-minute cities. And is it all connected? Is this just an overarching agenda that already had been planned to be rolled out? Or is it just taking the best case scenario, which is this interest in the advancement of technology and clearing the way for, you know, what the future might hold? I mean, what it looks like to me is that the previous administration, with these smart cities, whoever anticipated winning the presidency had a plan for these 15-minute cities. And so what we see here is, you know, an interesting conspiracy and cover-up to why LA might have burned down as well. Check this out.
In history. Okay, so do we all remember the massive wildfires in Los Angeles that started on January 7th of this year? Well, quote-unquote, investigators have been scouring the wreckage for months, hoping to find the cause. But what if I told you the answer is actually right in front of them in a place where they aren't allowed to look? Because this picture that I showed you before is not from the really big fire that burned down thousands of homes, but it is actually a photo from another fire that started 6 days earlier in the exact same spot. That's right, there wasn't a lot of media coverage about this for obvious reasons, but an 8-acre brush fire broke out in the Pacific Palisades on the morning of January 1st, they say likely due to New Year's Eve fireworks. Here are the side-by-side photos of the two fires, the one on January 1st and the one on the 7th, taken from the exact same angle. I mean, they look identical, except one was at night and the other during the day. Here's the overhead map showing once again both fires, the Laughlin fire on the 1st and the Palisades fire on the 7th, in the exact same spot. Now, according to this tweet posted by the LA Fire Department at 4:48 a.m. on January 1st, the Laughlin fire was supposedly, quote, fully contained that morning. But was it actually fully put out? Because according to a local resident, over the next 6 days, from January 2nd to January 6th, residents living along Calle Germain, Laughlin Lane, and Upper Palisades Drive continue to observe smoke wisps drifting from the original ignition site. These sightings, reported through 311, local neighborhood watch alerts, and social media, were consistently dismissed as, quote, post-fire haze. In fact, CBS News interviewed a man named Zane Mitchell who hiked the Temescal Ridge Trail the morning of January 1st, and he reported that parts of the ground by the Laughlin fire's burn scar were, quote, still smoldering. This is a picture that he took that morning, clearly the ground still smoldering. Now, I did some research, and according to wildfire experts, lingering hotspots can reignite under favoring conditions, which is exactly what we had in the coming days. But of course, the big question is, were there hotspots? That we don't know for sure because the city didn't bother following up. Quote, no drone surveillance was deployed, no infrared scans were conducted, allegedly. But don't fret, NASA, which is still there for now, has a satellite called Sentinel-2, and looking at those images, there does appear to be persistent heat signatures left by the January 1st fire. You can see in this image on the left from December 28th, all green, and then on the right, January 2nd, the exact same spot is now red, suggesting that the fire indeed wasn't fully put out. I mean, I don't think there is quite literally a better smoking gun. And just so everybody knows, not doing a proper thermal imaging after a fire is a protocol violation, which once again, the city allegedly did not do. Now, of course, nobody, not the fire chief, not Karen Bass, certainly not Gavin Newsom, can admit to any of this because it necessarily makes them liable for criminal negligence. Okay, we're talking deaths, property loss, damages into the hundreds of billions of dollars, because if those two fires are linked, it turns this from an act of God to now a breach of protocol for not properly extinguishing a previous fire, which at this point maybe also explains why the city has still refused to release records of the LA Fire Department's actions leading up to the fire, which includes 911 calls, dispatch logs, and internal communications. Hard to imagine, or at the very least come up with a legitimate reason why they wouldn't want that information to be public, other than possibly a cover-up. LA's Deputy Fire Chief Everett has also, on the record, publicly expressed skepticism that the Palisades fire was sparked by a rekindling of the earlier blaze, saying, quote, "That fire was dead out." But was it, or are there just 160 billion reasons for him to say that? My name is James Lee.
So this guy is bringing up the theory that they negligently allowed a fire to continue to go untempered, knowing that it would catch the right wind gust or whatever and cause a massive burn down of LA, and that it was almost like they allowed it to happen. And I kind of think this is one of the more mainstream theories, because I do remember seeing videos around that time of men being surrounded and shouted at for trying to commit arson in the cities, and people shouting at them, calling them out. Just very interesting. Here's an interesting Tucker Carlson segment about somebody who was taken out, who had some information against OpenAI, who is at the forefront of this AI revolution. Check this out.
So he was quoted saying that OpenAI was committing crimes, and a month later he was dead.
That's not just it. On November 18th, New York Times named my son as custodian witness. Custodian witness is very, very important. He had the documents against OpenAI. That was on 18th. 22nd, he just came back from vacation from LA and Catalina Island the same night. They have attacked him and killed him.
So he was quoted saying that OpenAI was committing crimes, and a month later he was dead.
That's not just it. On November 18th, New York Times named my son as custodian witness. Custodian witness is very, very important. He had the...
Ooh, interesting. I wonder what he had before he was murdered.
Probably the Epstein list or something.
Who's to tell? Well, he could have had the files for their robot team captain. You know what I mean? Like just recently, where there was an actual competition between robots and soccer. Check this out.
Take the ball, retard.
Yeah, so I thought that was pretty cool that AI has advanced to the point that it can play soccer with these little robots. Here's something else cool that AI can do. Palantir is now going to spy on you through your own four walls. Privacy is a total myth. I remember in previous Skiba News Nation episodes we covered how Wi-Fi routers were able to be used to kind of sense objects in a room depending on the frequency bounce back kind of thing, and now apparently they're watching you and admitting it. Xfinity just launched Wi-Fi Motion, a new feature that tracks movement inside your home using nothing but Wi-Fi signals. No cameras, no sensors, just your internet bounding waves off your body to see where you are. Oh, man.
Yep, I mean, no surprises, really. I mean, everybody knew it, that they were watching us. They just admitted it. At least they're honest.
Oh, yeah, at least they're telling us that they're they're X-raying us with Wi-Fi. All right, so this next segment is kind of interesting. It's going to have to be heavily censored. So, of course, any bleeps you hear are not curse words. They're actual just references to things that are done to mankind through coercion and influence of fear. And I think hearing the health secretary speak about these things just recently is very interesting, what he's been saying on the world stage.
The level, I know a lot now about bioweapons because I've been doing a book on it for the past 2.5 years, and you know, the technology that we now have to develop these microbes, we've put hundreds of millions of dollars into ethnically targeted microbes. The Chinese have done the same thing. In fact, 19, there's an argument that it is ethnically targeted. 19 attacked certain races disproportionately. The races that are most immune to 19 are because of the structure of the genetic structure of genetic differentials among different races of the receptors of the ACE2 receptor.
The guy next to him is making me laugh.
Is targeted to attack Caucasians and black people. The people who are most immune are Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese. But we don't know whether it's deliberately targeted that or not. But there are papers out there that show the racial and ethnic differential impact to that. We do know that the Chinese are spending hundreds of millions of dollars developing ethnic bioweapons, and we are developing ethnic bioweapons. That's what all those labs in the Ukraine are about. They're collecting Russian DNA, they're collecting Chinese DNA, so that we can target people.
So this is directly connected. You see how he's describing them collecting DNA so that people can be targeted. Well, check this out. They're already implementing this for other pest control scenarios. The Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services and other organizations have been releasing weevils in northern Virginia and the Piedmont region to help control the weeds spread. The weevils feed specifically on a mile a minute and are known to be effective in reducing its populations. So these are genetically selected creatures that they're releasing so that they can eat the population of this weed, right? And so you see, not only are they doing it for garden tending, so to speak, they're doing it for people tending as well, which, you know, obviously is a little freaky. How about this next video? And this is somebody I hope you can get to come to true. Oh, you okay over there?
It was Charlie trying to jump up on it. Oh my gosh. Come here. Come here. He meant to do that. He meant to do that. He just tried to get up there. You okay? He said, just my pride is hurt. Just my pride.
Hey, Charlie. Well, I hope this this lady could come to TruthorCon. She would be a fantastic addition, or at least somebody speaking on these same topics. But this is, I believe it's Barbara O'Neill. Check this out.
Putin, the Russian's president, he's passed a law that any Russian who grows or sells genetically modified foods is to be considered a terrorist. Whew. He's even giving land away to Russians who will grow food organically, non-GMO. You put his name and GMO in Google that and you'll read the spiel. He says, we Russians look across at the West, over-medicated, overfed, sitting in front of boxes every night in their lounge rooms, eating food that has no nutrients, he said, and we know it's weakening the West. Is he right? Absolutely.
So I don't know. Maybe Russia isn't all so bad as they've made them out. Obviously, if Putin's making moves to keep GMO stuff from their food supply and calling it out for what it is, hopefully we can get over here in the good old USA. I mean, they're light years ahead of us if they're already banning GMO stuff, because it's so difficult to go to the grocery store and not find something that has the label produced with genetically bioengineered ingredients. But man, RFK has been calling out a lot of stuff, so it's really cool to see him in the position. But in the same way that we see Trump is doing all these big moves and representing this voice of conservative America that's been wanting the swamp to be drained for so long, and during his administration, we're seeing things roll out that seem to be beyond the scope. It's transcending presidencies. The plan that we see rolling out in front of us, it seems like. But check out this other statement from RFK.
Happened in 1989.
Check this out. It looks like while we might not be arresting anybody for the big conspiracy RFK was just talking about, there are some arrests going to be made very soon, and a fraud effort found in some healthcare providers.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Matthew Gagliotti, and I'm the head of the Justice Department's Criminal Division. Thank you all for joining us today as we announce the largest coordinated healthcare fraud takedown in the history of the Department of Justice. Today marks a decisive moment in our fight to protect American taxpayers from fraudsters and to defend the integrity of America's healthcare system. We are announcing today charges against 324 defendants for their alleged participation in healthcare fraud schemes involving approximately $14.6 billion in false claims submitted to Medicare, Medicaid, and other healthcare programs.
Not only are they setting up this medical fraud takedown, but we have these comments coming from RFK about a particular individual who was pardoned at the end of the last administration.
He got immunity. Why did he need immunity? Why did he need a pardon in advance?
What do you think the answer is?
I would be speculating, but I think he was vulnerable. I think he had a lot of liability on creating virus. He was funding precisely that research at the Wuhan lab.
Yep.
And he was giving them the technology. He was giving them, he gave them not only the technology, the precise technology for developing that pathogen. He got immunity. Why did he need immunity?
Of course, who he's talking about is Mr. Fauci. Did you guys hear recently that the White House was setting up metal barricades all around up at Capitol Hill? It's almost as if they were anticipating something. Just happened recently, but
we're seeing a lot of these helicopters like that have been flying in front of the White House. They're basically doing a big square around both the Washington Monument and the
I'll
White
be in
House.
there pretty soon. Maybe from the No Kings people.
Yeah. Hey, man, what if he is planning to return to his old White House, and on your visit, you're destined for a meeting with the good old DJT?
Well, I hear he does regularly surprise people that go through and have a tour of the White House, so it'd be pretty cool.
Hey, that would be pretty cool. I do think so. Our last news story for this week is, of course, something that was all over the news of some firefighters that were lured into a shooting. Check out this report.
We are actively taking sniper fire as we speak. This is an active situation. So at approximately 1:21 p.m. this afternoon, we received reports of a fire on the east side of Canfield Mountain. Fire assets responded to the scene, and at approximately 2 p.m. this afternoon, it was reported that firefighters were receiving shots fired at them.
Some law enforcement right now, there's an active shooter zone. They're shot. BC3's down, BC1's down. Everybody's shot up here. Law enforcement, code 3 now up here.
We have an unknown amount of casualties. We still have civilians that are coming off of that mountain. We might have civilians that are stuck or in shock on that mountain. So this is a very, very fresh situation.
So I know some people have claimed there's a connection with certain groups in that area. But I think it's very interesting that we're seeing events like this pop off. So as more information comes out about this, of course, we're probably going to cover it in the future. But pretty crazy. They had a call go out, firefighters showing up to fight a fire, and then they came under fire, and 2 were killed. So
such a sad
what
story.
did you guys hear about that recently?
Well, I heard that he called the fire department and he just started shooting, which, I mean, that's something only a monster would do, you know, because they're not armed. They're trying to save lives, and they end up going, and then they're shot. It's just, that's all I've heard about it, but I haven't done a lot of research.
Yeah. Well, anyways, so that's all the news for this week, Jeremiah. And for everybody watching, hey, if you want to, go check out tribegame.net. And anyways, that's all the news for this week, Jeremiah.
All right, thanks, Jake, for another great current news as always. And coming up soon is Opa's Corner and History's Mysteries. But now, a quick look at my new book, Charlie's Big Adventures Around the World or Not.
Something in the mail today. I open it up, see what it is. Look at that. Charlie, look at this, look. It's you, Charlie's Big Adventures Around the World. We're gonna flip through it. Look at all that. Look at those things.
Here they are.
Two Danish boys.
So now if you guys buy this in our Babylon Rising bookstore, you get a free signed copy for the same price. So I just wanted to throw that out there. If you guys want a special edition of the book, go there.
Check out our new and improved BabylonRisingBooks.com, where you can get Rob Skiba's books, bundles, DVDs, DVD-ROMs, videos, and so much more. You can even get Sheila and Jeremiah's books, so check it out now.
It's about that time for an all-new Opa's Corner. Take it away, Opa.
Mein Hut, der hat 3 Ecken. 3 Ecken hat mein Hut. Und hat nicht 3 Ecken, dann ist es nicht mein Hut.
The strange, the bizarre, the unexpected. These are the kinds of subjects a man named Robert L. Ripley challenged us to believe it or not.
Believe it or not, you.
Wally, believe it or not.
Believe it or not.
Believe it!
You're a loony.
The McMurdo Dry Valleys in Antarctica are considered the driest place on Earth. They haven't received precipitation for nearly 2 million years. I'd like to see that weatherman who kept those records. Believe it or not. At least 11 babies have been born in Antarctica, along with 11,000 ancient aliens. Believe it or not. Emperor penguins can shut down organs that aren't in use to stay underwater for up to 20 minutes. Have you heard the joke about the most important body organ? Believe it or not, a Canadian man, Doug Hunt, walked 14 steps on 55-foot tall stilts. Why? Believe it or not, the first crossword puzzle, invented in 1913, was called a word cross until a printing error flipped it to crossword, a mistake that became permanent. And I thought it was because someone couldn't solve the puzzle and had crosswords with the author. Believe it or not. In 2025, 6 Wienermobiles raced in the first ever Weenie 500 at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And the winner is, believe it or not, like humans, cats often have a preferred paw. Females usually favor the right, while males lean left. How about it, Charlie? Believe it or not. Fashionable Victorian women adorned their hats with entire taxidermized birds, sometimes posed in flight.
I want one.
My bird's better than your bird. Believe it or not. Galileo's preserved middle finger is on display at the Museo Galileo in Florence, Italy. I'll leave that one to your imagination. Believe
Flip
it
somebody a Galileo?
or not.
Oh.
A duck in Switzerland was caught on radar at 52 kilometers per hour in a 32 kilometer per hour zone. Bad duck, bad duck. What you gonna do when they come for you? Believe it or not. Even in the modern era, ghost ships drifting at sea with no crew are still discovered under mysterious circumstances. Dead men tell no tales. Believe it or not. After King Eric of Pomerania was dethroned in Sweden, Norway, and Denmark, he went on to become a pirate. Wonder if he knew Jack Sparrow. Believe it or not. Holy chicken! Whole chickens are banned from papal concaves to prevent hidden messages and to ensure strict security during the election of a new pope. I got a question. Can a cardinal really eat a whole chicken? Believe it or not. The longest conclave on record took nearly 3 years to elect Pope Gregory X in 1271. Betcha they were partying the whole time. Believe it or not. Every horse in the 2025 Kentucky Derby is a descendant of the legendary Secretariat, whose 1973 win still holds the record for the fastest time. Boy, what a stud. Believe it or not. Warning. The content of the following videos have not been verified by Opa's Corner. Viewer discretion advised.
This is the only proof we have of time travel, and it's absolutely terrifying. In 1923, archaeologists uncovered a sealed tomb in Egypt. Inside, they found something that defied logic. A photograph dated 1987. It showed a man in modern clothing standing in front of the tomb, holding a camera. The man was identified as Elon Huck, a scientist who vanished in 1987 while working on a top-secret government project called Kronos. The project's goal? To unlock time travel. But it was shut down after Huck disappeared without a trace. The photograph had a chilling message scrawled on the back. I tried to stop it, but the loop is inevitable. Years later, in 1980, another photograph surfaced. This one showed Elon Huck, now decades older, standing in front of the same tomb. The date on the photo? 2025. Experts were stunned. How could a man exist in 3 different timelines? And what did he mean by the loop is inevitable? The final clue was found in Huck's 1987 lab notes. He wrote, "Time isn't linear, it's a loop, and I'm trapped in it." But here's the twist. In 2023, a team of researchers decided to open the tomb again. Inside, they found a camera, the same one from the photographs. When they developed the film, it showed a picture of them standing in the tomb, dated 2045. The disappearance of this entire class is still one of the creepiest unsolved cases in history. It was 1963 at St. Vincent's High School. The day started out normal, a regular history class in room 303. But halfway through the lesson, the teacher, Mr. Walker, stepped out for just a minute. When he came back, every single student was gone. The police rushed to the scene. It looked like the kids had just disappeared into thin air. Desks were still in place, backpacks left behind, untouched. Some believed the students ran away. Others thought someone might have taken them. But there were no signs of a fight, and all the windows were still locked from the inside. A few days later, the school janitor, an older man named Frank, told police something strange. He had found a stack of old textbooks in the basement, covered in dust, falling apart. They looked exactly like the ones the missing class had used, but these were from 1913. Inside the covers were names, the same names as the kids who had just vanished. Next to each name was a word written in pencil, returned. The school checked its old files. Shockingly, in 1913, another class of 30 students had disappeared. They were never seen again. So what really happened? Did this group come from the past, jump to the future, and somehow get sent back? Where did they go? What do you think really happened?
Donald Trump is a time traveler, and here's the evidence. In 1893, a book was published titled The Mysterious Adventures of Baron Trump. At first glance, it seems like just another old book, but here's where it gets strange. Donald Trump's youngest son is also named Baron Trump. Now take a look at this cover. Doesn't the child in the illustration bear an uncanny resemblance to Trump's son? The story follows a boy who discovers a way to explore other times, and his mentor is called Don. Coincidence? Maybe, but there's more. The author of the book, Ingersoll Lockwood, also published another book in 1896 titled The Last President. This book tells the story of a wealthy man living on Fifth Avenue in New York City. Now let me ask you this. Do you know what's located on Fifth Avenue today? That's right, the Trump Tower. The story goes on to describe how this man unexpectedly rises to power despite no one believing in him. Over time, he forms a government team. One of the key members of his government is named Leaf Pence. Does that surname sound familiar to you? And it doesn't end there. In 1943, Nikola Tesla claimed he had discovered how to manipulate time and open portals to other places. When Tesla died, the FBI confiscated all his documents. And do you know who they called to analyze his findings? A scientist from MIT named John Trump, Donald Trump's uncle. Too many coincidences? I don't think so. What do you think? Are you pleased about Trump's rise to the presidency? Type Trump if you want me to keep exposing the secrets the elite don't want you to know.
Oh, thank God I'm awake. I dreamt that they'd give me a treat if I passed a test, but I didn't study, and I couldn't remember how to sit. How Amazon was invented. Any ideas how to get more cardboard boxes into our homes? It's a note from my mother saying I don't have to go to prison. After winning the lottery, the old woman leaves her shoe and moves to Beverly Hills. Why alien abductions happen only at night.
It's 9 p.m. and you're just now telling me you need a human for school tomorrow?
The farm is only looking for someone part-time. No more than 80 hours a week. Oh my God! Do I really look like that when I'm running?
Quit complaining and eat it. Number 1, chicken soup is good for the flu. And number 2, it's nobody we know.
Cannibals.
And then one of the little kids shined his flashlight into the corner of the basement, and there they saw these strange jars. Some said creamy, some said crunchy. Your Honor, before my client is sworn in on the Bible, we'd like to request the removal of pages 3, 7, 24, 26, 55 through 59, 122, 148, 160 through 375. The number of people who confuse 2 and 2 is amazing to me. Author signing.
I hear she's very down to earth.
In the Old West, vegetarians were often shot with little provocation.
I don't believe you heard me right, stranger. I said I'd like to buy you a chicken leg.
It's a mystery, Professor. This boulder has been balancing up there for 10,000 years. What in the world finally caused it to topple over? Welcome to heaven. Here's your harp. Welcome to hell. Here's your accordion. I can't believe this. Can't anyone here get the lid off the mayonnaise? Your profile says you're a grapefruit.
I am a grapefruit.
Energy-saving bulbs. Want to go for a run? You go ahead. Sucker fish at home. Well, I just can't believe you went and paid $5,000 for a toaster that's not worth $20. That guy must still be laughing. Oh yeah? How about yesterday, when that fellow sold you that magic pen and pencil set for $10,000? Chief, say, someone here walk through Buffalo Field. My husband stopped working ever since he left his cap off. So, you found guilty? You get jail time? No. Me just wear ankle monitor.
Wake up! I sent you out here an hour ago to count the sheep.
For the last time, sir, this is not an auction. He told his kid it was time to tell him about us. I don't know what that means, but it doesn't sound good.
Would you take a look at the car, Dad? The passenger door won't open.
WFLY News. The world's oldest mayfly died today at the age of 28 hours and 2 minutes. That's story at 11 for those of you who are still alive. Day old bread, and we won't go home. I was robbed by 6 dwarfs today. Not happy. I wondered how Iran shot all those missiles. And that concludes another Opa's Corner.
Shout out to Opa's biggest fan. If you want to send us a clip of you playing it, send it to our email.
Opa's Corner is now available on my own YouTube channel. Like, share, and subscribe.
Thank you, Opa, for another great Opa's Corner. And now a quick word from our good friend Kristen. I want to introduce you guys to somebody named Kristen, who's one of the biggest forces behind Skiba News Nation. This is Kristen. She helps us get all the big guests. I understand that you're doing this full time now. So how can people find out how to use your service?
Well, I started Fellow Helper Agency, and you can go to fellowhelperagency.com. And I do any of the behind the scenes email, getting the interviews, and I do prep work for the shows as well. I do timestamps and moderating.
She is the best with connects. If you like any of our shows, any of our big guests, she's the person to go to. And if you have a channel, definitely go to our website. So go check out fellowhelperagency.com. It's time for an all-new History's Mysteries. So this week's History's Mysteries, we're going to be diving into one of the most unsolved mysteries on the internet. I don't know if you're a fan of internet mysteries, but this one just fascinated me, and it's about a 911 phone call from a lady named Ruth Price. So before we get into it, let's play this first clip.
The topic of today's video is probably one of the most infamous 911 calls on the internet, mostly due to how downright disturbing it is. Now, I recall hearing about this call on YouTube years ago, and I've personally gone back and forth for years about the authenticity of this particular recording. And what I'm referring to here is the Ruth Price phone call. And I must say, like all popular internet topics, it's a pretty massive hotbed for misinformation. Now, in case you are unfamiliar with this particular phone call, let me give you a brief rundown. Essentially, ever since the early 2000s, a minute-long audio file has begun circulating around the internet. It has since captured the internet's attention for how downright disturbing it is. And to summarize the call's contents, an elderly woman appears to be calling for help from a 911 operator.
Yeah, this is Ruth Price.
But the operator ends up cutting her off before she gives her full address.
3877. What's the problem, ma'am? Oh, there's some guy been checking the place out.
Now, essentially, this is a critical error in regards to standard operating procedure for emergency dispatchers. As a result, the call continues with no known location for Ruth.
Oh, well, you were in the back.
Unprompted, Ruth then goes on to explain that she's an old woman and lives alone, and that the man was there claiming to look for an apartment.
I have an apartment in the back, and he said he was looking for a guy, and he comes to my door, and yes, and said he's looking for an apartment. So I live alone, and I'm an old lady.
The operator then asks where the man currently is, and Ruth says she doesn't know.
Where is he now, ma'am? I don't have no idea.
Now, I want to give you a fair warning if you are wearing headphones. The next part is a bit loud. That, and I also don't want to jump scare you. But what follows is the most disturbing part of this call. Surprisingly, the operator says nothing throughout this entire thing, and then the call mysteriously cuts off with no further context.
So that's a horrifying phone call, and when I first heard it, I thought it was like super weird, and the debate going back and forth on if it's real or if it's not is I guess what fascinates me about this particular story. So let's go ahead and play the second clip, which is called Documentation.
Now, naturally, this raises a lot of questions, with the biggest being, was this recording real? Who was Ruth? And was the person ever caught? And to date, countless videos and other forms of media have hotly debated every last detail of this tape to assess its legitimacy. And while morbid, that's not to say that other moments like these haven't also been captured in 911 audio. After all, these are emergency phone calls. But while every other shocking phone call online seems to have some proper documentation, this one does not. And if there's something that the internet has been in agreement on with this particular tape, it's that it at least sounds real. So I think the first question to ask here is, why is there no documentation? Let's start by analyzing where the phone call originated from. The earliest circulation on the internet dates back to a website by the name of 911emergency.com in August of 2000. The website featured a wide variety of 911 dispatcher resources, as well as a section on the site dedicated to 911 audio. Now, while much of the audio seems to be sourced from a variety of reliable locations, such as calls from the Los Angeles Police Department's own website, the origins of other calls aren't quite as clear. For one, despite the website stating that you could find more audio files at LAPD online, their catalog was slim, and only a few calls found on this website actually came from that source. And the second thing that I should point out here is that many of the calls hosted here were already notorious, and we can presume that the audio files for these were taken from other news websites. But that being said, let's focus back on the Ruth Price phone call. Elderly female calls police to report a suspicious male outside. While on the phone with the dispatcher, she is brutally, and the dispatcher did not obtain her address before the attack occurred. This call was before the implementation of 911. Now, based on this website statement, this tape is pretty old. 911 was first implemented in 1968, and it took quite a bit of time for that implementation to fully spread across the United States. And it's worth pointing out that we never heard any mention of 911 on the tape, and nobody else seems to have pointed this detail out. And what makes this detail so particularly interesting was that for some time, people people had speculated this call was from the pre-internet era, hence the lack of proper documentation. And additionally, if this crime was written about in a local newspaper or something of the sort pre-internet, you should probably know as well that in relation to these types of assaults, a lot of the times the names of the victims aren't released until authorities do so, or additionally the name can be withheld at the request of the family. Now, at first, I was very skeptical of this audio, as anybody could submit this audio to this website, but based on some bits and pieces of what I could find about who owned this website, it appears to have been curated by a practicing 911 operator at the time, and I was able to verify all these details about their profession as well. And considering this person is not a public figure, for the sake of this video, let's just call them C. I managed to find that C was running a new business after retiring, and I reached out to her. Now, it took a while, but she did end up getting back to me with some information that has never been shared before about this particular case. Here's what she had to say. Hi there. Sorry, I meant to respond to you earlier. I was a 911 dispatcher from 1990 to 2016. That particular call was a 911 training call. I'm not sure where it originated, but I do believe it was authentic. My best guess is that the incident occurred well before 1990. I was told that it either occurred before the 911 system was in place, or the call came in on a non-911 line. The reason why it made a good training call was that the dispatcher cut the caller off before a valid address was obtained. It was also my understanding that the caller was brutally and before they were able to locate her. Additionally, I went on to ask her how she first came in contact with the tape. She stated this. I first heard it in the early 90s. It was before the internet was a thing. I copied it from an old school cassette tape.
So it was used for training purposes, and then some sites say that it's a real call, and then some say it's a fake call. So, I mean, I don't know. It's just kind of crazy. So this next clip, we're going to be talking about spread and rumors. So check this out.
Now, while we have covered where the audio first originated, let's now break it down and actually get to how this spread online and the subsequent rumors to see what can be ruled out. While C seems to be responsible for first uploading the audio to the internet, a pro-firearm site by the name of Marksman seems to be the one that popularized it thereafter. And hereafter, it would appear on officer.org, and then a user by the name of HNDLC3 would respond to a post about the audio file, and our user would write the following. I've heard this one before. This tape has stuck with me these last few years. It has reminded me not to treat every call as routine. During my dispatcher class, our instructor pointed out how the dispatcher sounded disinterested in the lady's problem. Had she not cut her off from giving her address, the police may have been there sooner. I don't know if the agency had an ANI or ALI or E911 when this happened, but our instructor said that it took a while to find her, obviously too late. The scumbag deserves whatever punishment we could legally inflict on him, and then some. Now, it's worth pointing out that this particular user listed themselves as an ambulance dispatcher located in California on their forum profile, and it appears that a few dispatchers have corroborated this idea of this call being used in 911 training. But I will note in every instance of this occurring claim, it was always presented to them as a real call. Additionally, another comment on Reddit in 2015 shares a similar sentiment. I joined Reddit purely to comment on this extremely disturbing phone call. I'm currently a public safety officer, but in the early 1990s, I worked as a 911 dispatcher in Florida. This call was played for us as a part of a training exercise as an example of why it's so critical to ask for a caller's address before anything else. As a result of similar incidents, it's been policy across various departments to state 911, what is your location, before asking anything else. My sense is that this audio is prolific within training programs for 911 operators, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's still used to this day. I've scoured the internet for more information ever since stumbling back on it a few years ago, but I found nothing concrete. What little info there is matches up with what I was told in the early 90s. The call was made in 1988. The caller was an elderly woman by the name of Ruth Price. She was killed by a prowler, and the prowler was not apprehended. I'm so frustrated by the lack of any credible information about the call. The oldest post I could find, it dates back to 2002 on a police message board. On that forum, another user, which we already talked about, also references hearing it in a police dispatch class. I'm absolutely certain it's as old as at least the 80s. If I had known it had come back to haunt me decades later, I would have asked so many more questions about it at the time. If anyone has more info, please provide. Now, I will note this commenter's mention of 1988 seems to be a randomly added detail. The mention of 1988 doesn't occur anywhere else on the internet before this comment. While some people have pointed to an obituary for one Ruth Price, who died on this particular year, this woman died of an illness. Additionally, it's worth mentioning that not a single training organization has ever confirmed to have used this as a part of their curriculum. Despite many operators claiming that they have heard it there, no spokesman has ever clarified the origins of this tape. Additionally, when Scare Theater covered this a couple years ago, he reached out to various 911 training centers, and they all claimed that they either had no knowledge of the call or they could not confirm or deny the authenticity of the tape. However, I will note another interesting rumor appeared on a Reddit thread from around 2017, where a user stated, "This is the call that changed my mind when I applied to be a 911 dispatcher. I was near the end of a long application process, heard this, and realized I couldn't deal with hearing this kind of thing, even if it was once in a great while. The department I was applying for wouldn't even tell us what happened to the woman," citing the fact that the 911 operators often don't know the outcome of the calls they answer. I can't imagine how it feels to be taking a call like this in a real and urgent emergency situation. Now, this particular comment got me thinking. Perhaps the reason that no training organization has ever confirmed or denied its existence has to do with the fact that they might not know either, or it's some kind of additional test meant to weed out applicants. On the other hand, though, a poll I found on the 911 dispatcher subreddit shows that a large portion of dispatchers had no idea this call even existed, so perhaps not every person who goes through this training is familiar with this call. While I'd love to write this off simply as a fake made up by the training organizations, one thing that irked me while trying to find other Prowler cases associated to this was just how poorly documented a lot of these things were. And additionally, reading up on other cases like this, what I found interesting as well was that the Prowlers would often cut the phone lines prior to a robbery or break-in. And the fact that criminals were cutting phone lines prior to entering implies the existence of old phone tapes where the victim at least tried to call the police. Continuing on with the spread of this phone call throughout the years, however, the reach was far and wide. For instance, it ended up being sampled as the scream in the game Nun Massacre. Now, on their wiki, they take a pretty harsh stance that this particular call was fake, and apparently they later claimed that they used a voice actor to, quote, recreate the scream. Now, I don't know how you recreate a scream, but continuing on, it has reached as far as to an artist by the name of William Control in 2008, where the full phone call appears as a hidden track on one of his albums. Now, questionable sampling decisions aside, if there is something I have learned from researching topics like this, it's that whenever something creepy pops up with no discernible origin, and nobody can fully explain it, you can bet your ass that people will start popping up left and right to start making shit up for the sake of creating an urban legend. Someone went as far as to create a full Wikipedia entry and backstory, fake photo, and went on to claim that this woman had passed away in 2014 to a man by the name of Soviet Steve. Additionally, this photo used for Ruth can be tied to a 92-year-old Florida woman who shot her neighbor after he refused to kiss her on the cheek before leaving. Moreover, in 2017, the cable channel A&E on the Latin American version of their website randomly attributed this photo of a random grandmother to a Ruth Price Wheeler, who died in 2015 from Alzheimer's. So to this day, if you Google Ruth Price, this random picture of someone's grandmother shows up. Additionally, another random detail I found online is that around 2017, an unlisted video on YouTube seems to have altered Ruth's name to Ruth Price Dugan, or Dugas. An obituary does in fact exist for one Ruth Anna Price Dugan in 1944. However, I could not find any other details about this woman's passing, so I have no idea how this uploader could claim that many people believed her name to be this if no prior reference to Dugan exists before this upload. Moreover, as time has passed, there have been two versions of the call that have been circulating online. One where Ruth's name is censored, and another version we listened to does not censor her full name. That being said though, perhaps the closest this came to being solved was in September of 2019, and it appeared that some circumstantial evidence could be tied to one particular Ruth Price. Because around this time, this led the internet to one particular Ruth Price in San Diego, California. If you recall, Ruth states 3877 as the start of her address, so one user on Reddit thought to search for a Ruth Price who lived in an address with a prefix of 3877. Surprisingly, they found a match, where looking at Google Street View, you can see that these homes were multifamily with an apartment in the back, and that seemed to line up with the call's dialogue pretty neatly. However, it's only until you realize that Ruth Price passed away in 1994, and this woman died of an illness, and despite this, many people have cited this as solved, but it just simply isn't.
Yeah, there are just too many questions, too many stories, and you know, that's what kind of made this a internet the internet turned her into something of a legend, and it's kind of interesting that you know, things happen this way. And before I get y'all's opinions on this, let's go ahead and play this last clip, which I called The Legend of Ruth Price.
Ultimately, I think the best way to summarize what we've covered is that this call has basically become an urban legend, and the Ruth Price phone call may have existed as an urban legend before even being uploaded onto the internet. While it has definitely been used for training, it appears that the origin of the call is still apocryphal, and after spending way too much time on this, I would say, in my opinion, if the tape is real, the reason Ruth Price hasn't been identified likely has to do with years of misinformation, poor documentation, and perhaps the nature of the crime that it may be attached to. Keep in mind, it's been 2 decades here on the internet, and nobody else seems to have brought up the fact that this call has no mention of 911 on it, and the original source of this audio claims this was a pre-911 tape. Additionally, it doesn't help that the name Ruth Price is absurdly common. On the other hand, if the tape is fake, that's not to say that similar audio doesn't exist in archives. The fact that prowlers cut phone lines as a standard practice pre-cell phones show that similar audio exists somewhere in archives, so ultimately it's worth considering that for context. Based on C's statement, it appears that this tape was circulating around on cassette tape for years, and given this fact, we have no idea how many hands this tape passed through before coming online. And I must say, I've looked through countless archives for some other piece of evidence or some similar incident that could lead to a potential candidate, but the search is honestly just a needle in a haystack.
So, I don't know. I think it's fascinating. What are your thoughts, Jake? Do you think it's real or a hoax? And are you into these kind of internet mysteries? Because I find them fascinating.
Yeah, I do like the story, and I like how it's almost as if something that was used for training purposes was turned into an urban legend. And what's interesting about that is it could actually have been a real recording, or like the way internet legends are made is really what it teaches me. And I think she could be used as an example of that in the future. Is that that recording basically, because people could say any story they want to about the things we share on the internet, and so we got to be careful with what we share, whether it's real or not.
Yeah, what are your thoughts, Opa?
Well, I think that the quality of that tape, if it's from 1988, is a little too clear. I think that somebody made it up. Now, maybe they made it up for training purposes, but I don't know. I mean, you should be able to find out who it is and where they are. I mean, at least now, but they haven't. So I don't know. I think that it's kind of made up.
Okay, well, you guys in the comments, you guys let me know what you think. If it's made up or if it's, a real person, legend. I mean, she's a legend regardless, right? Urban legend. So before we wrap all this up, this is my final clip, and special shout out to Jeff Z on Facebook for sending me this clip, and it made me laugh so hard. And please don't censor it, Jake. Let's play it.
You know what we basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. They don't know what the they're doing. They don't know what they're doing. You understand that? They don't know what the they're doing. They don't know what the they're doing. They don't know what the they're doing. You understand that? They violated it, but Israel violated it too. Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs like I've never seen before. I'm not happy with Israel. When they say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. The biggest load that we've seen. You know what we basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. They don't know what the they're doing. They don't know what the they're doing. You understand that? They don't know what the they're doing. They don't know what the they're doing. They don't know what the they're doing. You understand that? So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because the one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, it didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You understand that? Raise your voice! You know what we basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what the they're doing. They don't know what the they're doing. You understand that? They don't know what the they're doing. They don't know what the they're doing. They don't know what the they're doing. You understand that?
So I thought that was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. That'd be a lot of bleeps. But thank you for sending me that funny clip in our Skiba News Nation family group. And yeah, you got some memes for me, Jake?
Yes, I do.
All right, meet me up. Meet me up.
We're always talking about the increasing debt of the American government. Well, I hate when people can't let go of the past. Debt collectors are the worst. That's why we need the Year of Jubilee. Hey, speaking of castles, check this out. Private Scottish island with ruined castle goes on sale for $7.5 million.
Wow.
Hey, we could start our own civilization out there, Jeremiah, on a Scottish island.
Yeah, we could put alligators in there.
No, we're going to look for the Loch Ness Monster.
Okay.
Here's an interesting one I think you'll enjoy, Jeremiah. Scientists have created an AI that can translate cat meows into human language in real time with 95% accuracy, allegedly.
Yeah, my mother-in-law sent this to me, and I want to know what the app is because I want to see if it's accurate. Because I can read Charlie's mind. So.
Yep. Well, in the heart of Hebrew Fest, check this out. Hey, look, it's John the Baptist. Hey, hold on. I have a baby over here screaming, "Mama!" And I'm not a mama. I'm a papa. Hey, what's up, girl? You want some? You want some?
Some yogurt?
It's hummus.
Oh.
Hummus. See, you guys don't know what goes on behind the scenes. I'm sorry. All right, check this out. This is John the Baptist shouting at some Israelites. I'm baptizing people down by the river. Can you do the Chris Farley impression?
I can't. I don't think I'm big enough to do that.
Hey man, we could always get you a suit.
Yep.
This one's a little alarming. People that are unbleeped against code are 48% more likely to get into traffic accidents.
Hmm.
Wow.
That's,
Is it because we're still driving? Is that?
Yeah, that must be it.
Check this out. Just quietly was removed from the flu because it's something. Turns out we weren't wrong. We were just right too early. Hey, this is a guy pretending to be Jesus meeting the guy pretending to be the head of the church. You know why, right?
Why?
Because the claimant of the popage.
Oh.
They're still, you know, the proper claimant. We covered him. Yeah, you know.
The guy that says he is the real Pope.
Oh yeah. That's the one. Imagine how much propaganda it took to convince women that this is oppressive. Especially when you guys, you know, have helpers like me, you know, watching babies during live streams, you know. We help shoulder the load. We keep this society functioning, but imagine how much propaganda it took to convince women that this is oppressive. Huh. Well, alright guys, that's all the memes for this week.
Alright, thanks Jake for another great current news and memes as always. Opa, thank you for another great Opus Corner, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode as a whole. Stay awake, not woke, subscribe, and stay tuned. If you like what we do here on Skiba News Nation, please like and subscribe, and also share with others so we can grow the biggest truth-seeking community on the internet. Huge shout out to all of our Patreons out there. If you like bonus content, you want some extra Skiba News Nation stuff, please go to patreon.com/Skiba News Nation.
Son of the legendary Rob's Jeremiah Skiba.
It's like I don't even want to wake up.